Hello and welcome to this demo, Macaroons in Soft Pastel. I'll be working on the Sennelier pastel card paper. It's quite small, it's 16 centimeters by 24 centimeters. I really felt like doing something not as detailed, something quite looser, and so that's why I chose to go for the Sennelier Le Carte. I always find when I want to paint in a looser style, this is the paper that I gravitate towards. The other papers I use is pastel matte paper and velour paper. And this surface is different to those. It has a little bit more grit, but it's not sandy like sandpaper or UArt or Tim Fisher. It is much more gentle. I think it's actually made from cork. Don't quote me on that, but I think that is what it's made from. And so it is gentle. I don't feel like I need any tool to prevent my fingertips from falling off because it's scraping so hard. It's really quite gentle. So I just use my hands as a tool, really. Just creating a background, just putting in some purples, some beiges. I always put in a background. For me, a background just completes a painting. In some of the old classical paintings, the background often is the most interesting part for me because I feel like it just tells a story, or it adds to a telling of a story that you're trying to see in the object, if that makes sense. So I love backgrounds. Obviously this background ain't telling a story. This is just wanting to make the macaroons pop and look a little pretty. But so I'll go for a basic background like this, which is all just different colors, different tones, mixing them all together to get like a gradation of color into the background. But I will also do very intricate backgrounds too. As I mentioned, I think it just adds to the storytelling, and I really enjoy creating backgrounds. So on this paper, I use a number of different pastel brands. I have not yet used a pastel brand that doesn't work on this paper. So I'm using Blue Earths, which are amazing. They are some of my favorite pastels. They're made in the States. But Jackson's in the UK do supply or stock their sets as well as their open stock, which is awesome. I'm using Unisons. I've got Art Spectrum Extra Softs, Sennelier, Terry Ludwig's. So far, Schminky. So far, all the pastels go beautifully on the surface. It is really, really enjoyable. I love painting fruit. I don't know why, but fruit works amazingly on the surface. I don't know, I just really enjoy it. I think maybe I should do a fruit on pastel card paper next. Yeah, I think I'm going to do that. So because we've got a yellow macaroon and we've got a green macaroon, I'm putting a little bit of green into the background. It's just a good idea to add a little bit of some color from the background into your subject, as well as, color that you're going to use in your subject into the background. It can harmonize the whole piece. So that's just a little tip that I'm doing there, putting in a bit of like a pistachio green. I did not draw directly onto this paper. The only pastel paper I do draw directly onto is Pastel Matte. This one, unless I'm doing fruit, in which case I don't draw at all. I just wing it, I just go for it. But this one, basically all I did was put some pastel on the back of a copy of the reference photograph, smudge all the pastel in, dust off the excess pastel in my bin, sticky tape that onto the pastel paper, so my Sennelier Le Carte, take a pen and trace over, and then it leaves these lovely lines. So that's how I went about getting the outlines onto this piece. Really easy. And like I said, I wanted something much looser because often if I'm working on a commission, you know, it's high attention to detail. Generally, I find, you know, the people who give me their photograph, they want their painting to end up looking exactly like the photograph, which takes quite a lot of concentration. And often I'll just do, if I'm working on a big piece, a big commission like that, often I will just on the side do something that's much looser. I'm not too worried about anything. I'm not even worried about the colors. I'm just slapping stuff on there. Literally, that's what I'm doing in this painting. And it's really fun. I'm just having some fun with some macaroons. I've never painted macaroons before, but yeah. So just having some fun with my pastels. Those square pastels, the big square ones, like that one I've got right now, that is a Terry Ludwig. Enjoyable. I like them. I don't think they're as versatile as a round pastel, in my opinion. I don't know. You lose your edges quite quickly because they obviously wear down when you use them. And I haven't broken any Terry Ludwigs in half to get more sharp edges because they're so damn expensive. I'm petrified to do that. It's a bit silly, I know. What can I say? But like the Mount Vision, so that's a Mount Vision. Love them. They just beautiful. They are creamy, but still quite hard. So you can get nice sharp lines with them. And they're easy to break. They don't crumble into a million pieces, which sometimes with the Sennelier they do. So you have to be a little bit careful. But I really enjoy using Mount Vision. So you can get some beautiful sharp edges with them. But yeah, the Terry Ludwigs, my sharp edges don't last long. I generally use Terry Ludwigs for when I'm creating shadow, not detail. I actually seldom ever use them for detail. I use them usually as the base layer of shadow. And specifically, I'm talking about the Dark Intense 2 range, which is what I've got. Just by the by, if you were interested to know. Also, turquoise is not a color I use a lot in my work either. So it was fun to experiment with colors that I don't usually use. I definitely don't paint with lime greens or turquoise. God, that's a hard name to say. So that's another reason why I chose this one, is it was colors that I don't usually work with. So, you know, other parts of my brain were like firing off. So that was quite exciting. There's something so wonderful about creating a piece with no pressure. So I'm looking at this now and I'm going, oh my gosh, that looks like a hot mess. But I didn't care. I just wanted to have some fun. And that's really, really enjoyable because I think, I mean, I don't know, but like about everyone else who paints or does anything, actually, I suppose, is we can put a lot of pressure on ourselves to create these masterpieces. You know, if we are struggling financially and, you know, every painting we create has to sell, we're always creating under this pressure. So, and I'm totally guilty, you know, as well. So it was just nice to have a bit of fun on the side and not create a masterpiece. And that was totally okay. It was fun just to put color to paper without this pressure. So I would encourage you to just have some fun. Crack out your watercolors or whatever, and just take the pressure off of creating something spectacular or being able to sell it, and just have fun. Experience the joy and why you started your craft in the first place, I suppose, is just the enjoyment of painting or drawing, if you like your colored pencils, or sewing dresses or whatever. So I will come in with narration now and again if I feel like there's something I'd like to say. But for now, just enjoy watching, and I shall be in and out narrating. So the reason I've decided to put that bright green, that's a Jack Richardson, by the way, pastel, is that macaroon that's in the middle of the plate, not the one that's kind of standing up diagonally. The one sitting properly on the plate is this pistachio bright green color. So a little bit of that will be reflecting on the surface that it's sitting on, which is this beautiful turquoise ceramic dish. Hence why I have put some of that green in. Then I'm just darkening up now with some Terry Ludwig's. As you've seen a few times, I go back in, I will put a color down, then I realize I've lost a bit of the dark, so I'll go back in and reiterate any darks. Pastel's really, really versatile because you can do that. It's not like watercolor, where it's easy to make a little whoopsie. With pastel, if you do a mistake, it's so easy for you to be able to correct, as long as you're working in soft layers. What do I mean by soft layers? I mean you're not pressing too hard on the paper with your pastel, because if you press really hard with your pastel onto the paper, it's going to fill the tooth of the paper. What do I mean by tooth of the paper? By tooth of the paper, I mean the surface of the paper. So the surface of the paper has lots of kind of like hills. So hills and valleys. And those valleys can get really clogged up with pastel. So then if you clog it up with one color, you're not going to be able to come in with other colors on top. Like I said, this Sennelier Le Carte paper takes a lot of layers, which is really useful for this style of painting, where you're kind of building up your layers. To be honest, I could even probably build more layers in this piece, but as I mentioned in the beginning, my goal for this was just to put pigment onto paper. I am not too concerned with getting a very realistic finished painting. I'm just playing with my colors here, having some fun. But this pastel paper can definitely take more layers than what I've put down here. So it is worthwhile, if realism is what you're after, to have a gentle touch with your pastel, meaning gently touch the pastel onto the paper. It's beautiful turquoise from Blue Earth Pastels, made in the States. And I wanted to say, if you have any questions about colors that I'm using, or I don't know, anything, just please feel free to pop any questions down in the comments below. So as you can see, I'm taking, that's just a black. It's a Prismacolor New Pastel black, and I just needed to darken a little bit under that edge there. So lots of backwards and forwards with pastels, but I actually really enjoy that. I find it very therapeutic. Especially because, as I mentioned previously, there's no super pressure in this. This is just a relaxed painting I'm doing for myself, basically. So a little tip to not make your paintings look flat, if of course that's not what you're wanting and you're wanting a little bit more volume within your painting, so more of a 3D effect in your painting. A good idea is to bring in different tones, so different darks and lights, and lots of different colors. So I don't know if you've noticed, but in this bowl alone, I've brought in what's that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different colors are just in the bowl that the macaroons are sitting on. That will add depth to your painting, and they are different tones. So I've got the dark in there, which is the Terry Ludwig's, that dark turquoise and that dark grey color. Plus I've got black, and then I'm building up with the mid-tones, turquoise, more of a mid-tone turquoise, and a very light turquoise, which you can see on the edge. And I'm bringing in greens, kind of quite bluey greens, plus of course that bright Jack Richardson green for a little bit of the cast shadow. So yeah, if you're wanting to create depth to your paintings, don't just do a dark turquoise in there and then a light turquoise, because you're going to be missing so much of the in between, which is going to add volume. It's going to create more of that 3D effect. So don't be afraid to use lots of color, I think is what I'm basically saying. So this Jack Richardson, which I'm holding right now, it's in the UK so far, the only place I can find that sells them is Amazon. They're not too badly priced compared to other pastels here in the UK, which is great. Obviously, you can import from other places, like I know Dakota Pastels in the States has them. But I haven't bought from them yet because, I don't know, import duties. And I'm figuring it will probably cost the same as what I'd pay through Amazon anyway. But if anyone does know of a little art shop somewhere in the UK who sells Jack Richardson, that would be really awesome, because I would like to add more of these pastels to my collection. I only own the bright set, so it's 20 pastel sticks with all the bright. So it's got, bright purple, bright red, bright greens, bright blues, bright yellow, bright orange. I'm showing you a unison green 23. See, I'm just adding so much color into this. There's way more than just 3 colors or 2 colors. As I said, I think it just creates that depth, which is what I'm after. Even though I'm painting loosely and I'm not thinking too much about it, I'm just putting pastel on my paper. I still want it to look a little bit 3D because that is my style. That is what I enjoy. So you might be wondering what that piece of paper next to the left of my painting's purpose is. It's basically just for me to have a look, just to see what color it is before I put onto the paper. I don't usually paint like that. I usually just go in exactly with whatever pastel stick I choose to pick up. But it's also kind of a way for me to get to know my pastels a bit more. Um, Obviously, because like I said, this color scheme is not a color scheme I work in, so I'm unfamiliar with these pastels really, not the brands, but the actual pastel names and things. And I like to become quite familiar with my pastels. So ask me about purples and browns and greys. I'll be able to tell you the names and my favorite codes and everything. But with these turquoises, it was different for me. So that's why I decided to just have that sheet of paper up there. But I don't usually work like that. Just by the by, that's just a piece of pastel matte pastel paper, which, if you don't know, is another brand of paper which I love. I probably use that the most. It takes a lot of layers. It doesn't kill your fingertips. The colors are bright on there. It's just a very good paper. So can you see I've put in some highlights, so some lighter tones in there, and they're not white. I think perhaps sometimes when we're learning out our craft, how to paint, we tend to just grab the white and that's how we put in our highlights. But if you look here, you can actually see the highlights in this one. You've got a light aqua, turquoisey color, and then you've got like a very light green color. It's not to say I might not, I never use white in my highlights. Yes, I do. But sometimes it's nice to think a little bit more about color than just white for a highlight, is what I'm trying to say. Because again, it can just add more interest to a painting and it helps your painting not look so flat. Okay, so here we start laying in some of that green macaroon, and you can see I've got a beautiful bright yellow green. That's Jack Richardson from the bright set that I was talking about earlier. This that I'm holding in my hand right now is a Terry Ludwig. It's an extremely dark grey, and I'm just dotting in on the actual macaroon itself in the biscuit part, or the meringue part, I guess. I don't know. I didn't make macaroons, so I don't know what you call it. But anyway, the dark parts of the macaroon, I'm just putting those in first. And I'm playing a little bit with the color here. As I've mentioned several times in this video before, I don't paint macaroons. I don't paint food very often. Fruit, yes. But and I don't use these colors, so I'm just kind of playing around, seeing what's gonna work. That's a green. That's like a grass green I got there. But pastel is so forgiving. Like if I'm like, oh yeah, that's not the right color, I can layer on top of that, and it will work. The end result when you're finished will work. So sometimes on your early layers, it is quite fun to put colors that your eye naturally thinks, oh, that color's not right, that's a bit bright, or that's a bit off the wall. But because you're layering, it actually will add a certain depth to the finished piece. So I am working from a reference photograph that I found on the Facebook page called Free Reference Photos for Artists. The name of the photographer is Annelle Lilly, Annelle, and Lilly, Lilly. So you can go check it out on that Facebook group. It's a great group. I get quite a lot of reference photographs from there. They do everything from still lives to animals and across the animal kingdom, wildlife, pets, the works, ocean. So it's very useful, very useful. Just when you join the group, be sure to read the rules. Yeah. Beautiful bright Jack Richardson. But do you see, if I had just left this bright green and I hadn't put any other greens in this macaroon, it would look really, really flat. So here I am doing exactly what I've done for the base, for that ceramic dish the macaroons are sitting on. I'm bringing in lots of different colors. Obviously, I'm not bringing in pink. I'm bringing in greens, all the colors on the green spectrum. This green's got more blue in it. And I'm bringing different tones. I'm bringing in darker greens and lighter greens to give it a little bit more interest and to give the painting some depth. Mount Vision, they're great. You get a lot of pastel for your money. They're really, really amazing pastels. I really enjoy working with these, and they're really nice, big, chunky sticks. But look how it's going on beautifully over all those layers of pastel. and it's still going on top beautifully. That's because I'm working on a really good pastel paper, and every layer of pastel I'm putting on is a very light touch, as I've spoken about already. So I'm choosing to rub the pastel into the paper. Lots of pastel artists don't do this, but I personally love that soft look. So as you can see, because I've rubbed the pastel into the paper, it's creating like a softness, and I love that. But you, of course, can just leave it rough. As your pastel hits that paper and leaves a mark, you can leave that mark, but as I said, I like to soften it, and I love the tonal effect that you're getting. As you can see, because I've got a number of greens in there, dark and light greens, and so different value greens, it's created like this lovely depth in the macaroon. So my hands were pretty dirty, and I didn't want to do any more blending because I didn't want to muddy up my colors. So I actually went and washed my hands. When I am doing a pastel painting, I usually wash my hands probably every 15 to 20 minutes, depending how dark the piece is. So if there's a lot of black, if I'm doing a background with a lot of black or subject with lots of black, and then I want to come in start building it up for lighter values, then I'll definitely go wash my hands. Or you can also have a cloth next to you, like a damp cloth where you can wipe your hands, or a paper towel, or wet wipes, I guess. But obviously, it's better for the environment if you have a damp cloth next to you, just so that you don't get the muddiness, the blackness, or the dirtiness onto your painting, especially like for me now, I am concentrating on the cream, and so I'm definitely not wanting black to get in there. But say now by accident my hands were pretty black, and then I went in and I smudged some black on the creamy light part of the macaroon, the filling there. You could, if you've worked in soft gradual layers, you could go in with the light pastel on top of your mistake. As I've said previously, with not with macaroons, sorry, with pastels, it is really easy to correct mistakes because the pastel is so pigmented, it will just go straight over any mistakes you do. In saying that, personally, I think it is better to work cleanly, though. So starting to work on the yellow macaroon, and I'm putting in my darks. I'm just kind of testing out that yellow to see how it sits, but generally I work from dark to light, so I'm putting in some darks, and the darks tend to be more like browns with more yellow content in them. And I'm just testing out this beautiful bright yellow, just seeing how it sits, seeing if I'm happy with it, just playing around with my color. So this pastel stick that I've got in my hands now, it's an Art Spectrum Extra Soft square stick. They are made in Australia, and this is another Art Spectrum, and Jackson's do sell them in sets. You can buy the individual stock, I believe, with Dakota Pastels. I've actually asked Jackson's if they can please stock the open stock, so I can pick and choose my colors. I quite enjoy that. Also, if you're working on a budget and you don't have, £80 to splash out on 20 colors, and if you can just pay and buy and choose, what suits your budget more. Because pastel sticks can be really expensive, and especially if you're buying them in sets, obviously, because you're buying a lot in one go. But we shall see if they do bring them in, because I'd be very happy. They are very lovely pastel. They are quite a... Okay, so I should probably say, and I'm talking as if you're not familiar with pastels, right? So in the soft pastel category, you get very soft pastels. So you get soft pastels and hard pastels. In soft pastels, you get harder soft pastels, medium soft pastels, and very soft pastels. So in this piece, every single different brand has got a different consistency. So the Art Spectrum Extra Soft, they are very creamy and soft, but they're not as creamy and soft as the Blue Earth pastels, for example. The Mount Vision are probably the hardest pastels I'm using here, yet they are still called soft pastels because they're not as hard pastels. Yes, I know, I'm sorry, it's very confusing. I'll probably do a separate video specifically on pastels. That might be helpful. Anyway, every pastel that I'm using on this piece is soft pastel. But as I said, just to reiterate, within that category there are different types of softnesses, if that's even a real word. And why does that matter? Genuinely, harder soft pastels don't fill up the tooth of the paper as quickly as very soft pastels. So usually on my last layers, so when I'm putting in my tints, so my lighter colors, I will come in generally with the very, very soft pastels, because they leave an incredible amount of pigment behind because they're so soft. I should do a demonstration video, shouldn't I? Yeah. That is one to put in this very big pipeline of videos to do. I hope that wasn't too confusing, but feel free to ask questions and leave comments below. I do use hard pastels too. Now let's not talk about hard pastels because I'm really going to confuse everybody. Predominantly my work is all in soft pastel, and I shall leave it at that. Okay, so I'm actually holding my board, and now instead of working in soft, gentle, light layers as I've been talking about, I'm actually pressing quite hard because I'm wanting this pastel to leave a very opaque amount of pigment on the paper. So I am pressing hard because I know I'm not going to put other colors on top of this. So my intention is to leave a lot of pastel pigment in these places where I'm pressing hard. Just adding a bit of the Sennelier dark green, like a dark forest green. So as I said, I work generally from dark to light. That doesn't mean that, there we go, on the last layers I'm going to darken up a few places, you know. So that's exactly what I'm doing here. I just felt like, ooh, because if you look on the macaroon, it's got like these kind of where the meringue part puffs out. If it's the meringue part, I don't know. It does leave like these dark ridges. So I'm just putting those in. And that is me whacking my board because there is pastel residue, and don't blow it off. It's very tempting to see this pastel residue and want to like blow it off, but you really don't want to get that pastel pigment airborne and then breathe it in. It's not a good idea. So a good thing to learn from very early on is to bash and tap your board, because that pastel dust will fall down. So on my easel, I don't have it today because this is a very small piece, but especially if I'm working on a big piece, and especially if I'm working on sanded papers like UART or Tim Fisher. I don't like those very much, but if I do decide to give them another go, underneath my board I'll actually have a damp cloth so that that pastel dust falls on something damp, and so it can't be airborne. Because I don't like pastel dust flying around. So don't blow on your work. If you see bits of pastel pigment, give it a good tap like I did there. Again, by me darkening up, going around, having a look at my work and darkening up a few places, it's going to create more contrast. And generally speaking, the more contrast you create, the more 3D your painting is going to look. So this is a dark Terry Ludwig turquoise that I'm just going around and darkening up areas I feel need a little bit more darkness added to them. So over here, what I'm doing is I'm grounding that macaroon onto its surface. A good little tip, if it feels like something's floating around too much and you really need it to look like it is actually sitting on the surface, it's a good idea to take a dark like what I'm doing there and just put it underneath your object. So it just looks more that that macaroon's actually sitting on there, because there is actually a dark shadow underneath your object. So I was just putting that in. Oh, that's beautiful. Wonderful excuse to use this color. That is a blue earth. Punchy yellow green. Sorry, so the individual companies like Blue Earth, the actual company that makes these pastels, and I've called them Blue Earth pastels, within that range they have a whole bunch of numbers for each specific color. If you're interested to know what specific color I'm actually using, leave a comment in the comment section below and I shall answer you there. Because I did this piece quite a while ago, before I actually started my YouTube, with the intention to start YouTube. So I didn't actually color code, and I don't have my box of colors that I use because this was ages ago I did this. But I can easily go into my pastel boxes and pick out the colors and let you know. It's a Art Spectrum Extra Soft. It's part of the highlight set. And instead of everything in that highlight set just being white, it's every stick has got a slight tint. So this tint has actually got a green, like a mint green tint. So it's not just white. It's got a minty green, and then this one I'm using on the yellow has got a slight lemon yellow tint to it. So it's not just white. And these are lovely and soft, so they are extra soft pastels, so they go on top of all your pastel layers really nicely. Okay, so that is now nearly the end of this pastel demo. If you've enjoyed watching me and listening to me rattle on about pastels, then please do subscribe, and you can give the video a like, because that's really good apparently. I don't know if the algorithms or whatever's of the world, but thank you for joining me, and be sure to check out some other free stuff that I will be uploading to YouTube. Till next time, thank you, bye bye.